Hello everyone, my name is Kristen Robison and this is my presentation for Explicit Teaching and Instructional Strategies. And this is for SED 517 with Dr. Morris at Colorado Christian University. So to begin our presentation, we'll start with what is explicit instruction. So explicit instruction is a practice that considers interactions with students and their teacher or teachers, which is considered direct instruction. Expectations for these teachers teaching this way are they are clear with clear expectations, they're unambiguous, they're very direct, and they're visual, and this helps encompass all students, including diverse learners. Some features of explicit teacher-directed instruction are daily reviews, which develop a foundation on previous skills that students have learned, and this helps them build on those skills to learn new skills. That new content that they learn is presented through teacher modeling, lots of encouragement, and frequent questions. So these students are given those opportunities to ask if they need help, and teachers are also asking if the students are understanding what is being taught or if they need further instruction. After the initial instruction of new content, the students are given several opportunities for guided practice where explicit feedback and corrective instruction is given, and this just further enhances that instruction for them and that solidifying their learning. Any students that are struggling and students with accommodations are given the proper attention, and they're also giving those options for reteaching. So if they're really struggling and they're not understanding, the teacher will reteach the content to help further that knowledge for those students. Students are also given opportunities to work independently, and they're encouraged to follow that gradual release of responsibility. So we're teaching them up front, and then we're slowly giving them options to work independently and helping them along the way so that eventually they really understand that content, and then they can build on that content once they move on to another subject or to the next grade level. Systematic practice and review to build on concepts learned and retain information taught. So teachers that are explicitly teaching will continue to go back to this information, practice it, and review so that students really understand it and again can move on to the next lesson. Some instructional domains are conceptual understanding, procedural knowledge, declarative knowledge, and problem solving. So here I will just kind of go over the definitions, and then in the following slides we'll go over some ways that we can bring these domains into the classroom. So conceptual understanding is where students will understand a variety of complex concepts, including abstract mathematical symbols. So this means that they're going to recognize certain symbols, but they're also going to understand their meaning. And this is often related to real-life applications. So students will understand that 3 is a number, and 3 plus 3 is 6, but they're also going to understand that 3 is a quantity, and then we're adding another quantity to get a greater quantity, or vice versa when it comes to subtraction or division or multiplication. Procedural knowledge is where students understand the procedures and the steps when completing and answering a math problem. So they're going to learn, they're going to recognize, and then fully memorize the steps that are taken to create a problem. So we'll start off small. They'll learn how to complete an addition problem, move on to subtraction, and then further that knowledge for multiplication or division. Declarative knowledge is when students retrieve information from memory without effort or hesitation. So something that reminds me of this is when we say 2 plus 2 equals 4. A lot of people memorize that. They'll memorize those basic facts, and then we can build on that to go on to different, further, harder problems. And the last thing is problem solving. So problem solving, I think, is one of the most important. I mean, they're all very important, but problem solving helps students apply previous knowledge, skills, and strategies that they've learned, and they can apply them to different settings. So oftentimes this is real-life situations. Problem-solving skills include analyzing, identifying, and designing solutions to complex situations. So if you think of going to the grocery store, adding, subtracting, how much money you're paying, or adding up how much you owe, work-life situations. Really, this can relate to all kinds of situations when children or students are understanding appropriate ways to problem solve situations that they come into contact in real life. Okay, so now we'll go into how we can take these domains into the classroom. So for conceptual understanding, the use of manipulatives, which are like hands-on objects like unifix cubes, links, or fraction tiles where students can actually visualize and see, this strategy really helps students understand the concepts involved in math. And this strategy is mentioned in the Session 2 lesson plan that I created, because this lesson plan that I created focuses on measuring and converting units and really understanding how to interpret that data and put it onto graphs or tables. So in my lesson plan, we use actual measuring cups or containers so that students understand how to convert different measurements to another unit, or they understand how we can add one unit with another unit and then come up with the answer. Another way to really bring conceptual understanding into the classroom is by drawing pictures, because this really promotes those visual learners. And some students just really understand better if they can draw something, and they can really generalize them if they draw out the problem. This strategy I also use in my lesson plan in the beginning when we introduce vocabulary words, encouraging students to rewrite the definition of the vocabulary words or drawing pictures to help them understand. Next is procedural knowledge. So this is best instructed through a procedural strategy, and a couple of those are the SAW strategy and the DRAW strategy. So SAW means set up to solve, attack the problem, and wrap it up. So I use this in my lesson plan, the SAW strategy, because I designed it to write a problem on the board so they can visualize it, the word problem, they can see it on the board, read it. But then we break it down. We're going to set it up to solve. So what is this problem asking? What units are being used? What numbers, etc., etc. And then finally we attack the problem. So we take those manipulatives that I talked about, we attack it, we try to figure out how to solve it and what it means, like what do those units mean and how can we find the answer to this. So using those manipulatives, we'll finally wrap it up, we'll find the problem, we'll write it down and answer it. Another strategy is the draw strategy, which is very similar. So discover the sign, read the problem, answer or draw and check, and then write the answer. So this one's very similar. Like I said, they're going to discover what the sign is. So are we adding, are we subtracting, are we multiplying, or is there a combination of them where we have to use PEMDAS? And then we're going to really read the problem. Okay, what is the problem asking? How are we going to answer it? Finally, we're going to answer it. So we're going to either draw it out, we're going to write it down, whatever works for that student. We're going to double check it, and then we're going to write the answer. Declarative knowledge can be used in the classroom by using curriculum-based assessments. This helps the teachers understand what areas do students have that declarative knowledge and what areas do they really need to build on that. Timed assessments are another way to analyze this. This assesses how quickly students can recall information. So you may have used or you may have seen, if you have your own students, there's a worksheet where they have to answer so many problems in 1 minute. And the teacher can say, okay, we're going to start this, time them, turn it in. You can see how many questions the students answered and how many are correct. And that will help the teacher better kind of narrow down where they need to focus in the classroom to emphasize the declarative knowledge. The plan that I created does use informal and formal assessments to assess students' declarative knowledge. So we have a pre-test and a post-test that I had designed to put in there for the teacher to be able to analyze how the students are doing and where they can better help them. Another way that you can use this declarative knowledge in the classroom is called a constant time delay, and that's a systematic method of teacher prompts to aid students struggling with answering mathematical questions using declarative knowledge. So this is something that I've actually found to be very useful in the classroom with our diverse learners. So first we start with a stimulus. So the teacher presents a problem to the student, sometimes on a flashcard, sometimes orally, however it works for that student in the classroom. The student reads the problem aloud, and they're given a little bit of time to kind of process it and find out the answer. They're asked to wait for a teacher prompt because we don't want the students to just guess. So when the teacher prompts the student to answer, the student will answer. If the student is still incorrect, then the teacher will give a controlling prompt where the teacher restates the question and then states the answer. And then the student is given the responsibility to restate the problem and the answer to just really further emphasize that declarative knowledge. And finally, we have problem solving. Problem solving really, like I said, teaches students how to relate all of the math they learn into the real world. So teaching students how to solve word problems that relate to the real world help them learn how to problem solve and how to relate math to the outside life, outside of the classroom. So in my lesson plan, again, like I mentioned before, I use word problems, not strategies, to really emphasize the problem solving aspect. So if I give a word problem, I really want it to relate to the real world because I want students to be engaged. I want them to understand why they're learning this and how they can relate math to life outside of the classroom. And so these strategies can be used in word problems about baking or miles per hour or traveling, anything like that. And then we can use those manipulatives to help them understand really that concrete understanding of what does this mean and how do I solve that and how can I solve this problem. Another tool that you can use is anchored instruction, which involves using video-based problems as anchors, and that really engages students in problem solving. So there's a video that introduces the problem, and then we can further implement that I do, we do, you do system of teaching. And finally, here are my references that I used to create this presentation, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great day.